Hello, everyone, and happy Tuesday. I had to remind myself to say Tuesday. I always say Friday, but as we've said, this is a very special extra episode of Big Man We Dram. We decided to do one earlier this week because we have a big event coming up this Saturday, and we wanted to talk about it. And I'm lucky enough to be joined today by one of the people who's going to be part of that event on Saturday, and that would be Chloe Wood from the Bruichladdich Distillery. And we're going to talk a little bit about what life is like at and around the Bruichladdich Distillery now, but also some of the stuff we're going to, sort of a preview, if you will, of what we're going to talk about this weekend when we're joined by Simon Coughlin. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Chloe Wood.
Hello, how are we?
Thanks for joining us.
No, thank you very much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure.
It's funny. I study it ahead of time. I know everyone's title, but I always get nervous and I don't want to hash it. But you're Asia Pacific brand ambassador, right?
Correct.
Yes.
You are. Yeah, yes. I am indeed. 5 points.
There's always so many words in everyone's titles these days. And, I jumble them up and I make people the ambassadors of things that aren't that they aren't sometimes.
You could have given me some new countries right there to look after, to be honest.
The funny thing is sometimes I don't think I've ever actually gotten one wrong. I just convince myself I'm going to get one wrong.
Right, yeah, more than thinking about it.
But you are not joining us from Asia or anywhere in the Pacific right now, correct?
Correct. I'm coming from, I would say, a very sunny Scotland, but this time it's not so good. But yeah, I'm coming to you from Glasgow. So not Islay, but Glasgow, mainland Scotland.
I would normally be able to tell you that I'm coming from sunny Los Angeles almost always, but not right now. It's actually, it's very gray here today. It's been all week. It's been very gray.
Typical for the whiskey chats, that's the best kind of weather.
It is good whiskey weather. I'm always amazed how good of a whiskey community LA has, considering the weather is so seldom sort of what you naturally think of for whiskey weather, but tons of great fans, clubs, bars, stores everywhere. It's really fantastic.
Yeah, I've been hearing some great things. Since I've been back in Scotland, I've been working a lot closer with the brand team and the academy team on the island, and the stories that come out of the US, and just hearing how many fans we've got out there is incredible.
Yeah, it's funny. They keep popping up, and I think I would assume by now that doing what I've done for the last 2 years and promoting the film the way we've been promoting it and online as much as we are, that I knew every Bruichladdich centric group in Southern California, and I just met one last week. So
they keep on appearing. I think that's the amazing thing with Bruichladdich. We've got these fans that have been with us since day dot, right from the beginning. But as soon as people hear that story, they can get on board with it at any time, and yeah, it just keeps on going, which is great.
It's funny. Before we get into the toast or to the dram we're going to drink, but I want to tell you a funny story. I'm drinking the Islay Barley 2011, but this isn't what I set out to buy last week. There's a liquor store I go to here. I won't name them because I don't want to embarrass them, but there's a liquor store that I go to here all the time, and they have a website. And I looked online. I was looking to get a Port Charlotte. And it said they had a photo of all the whiskeys, and they had the 2009 Rockside Farm Islay Barley, and I thought, wow, that's impossible to find. It's on their website. I'm going to order it. I ordered it right away. Said I'll come pick it up. An hour later, I get a notice that my order's ready. I drive and I go pick it up, and it's this. And I said to the guy, I was like, look, I don't mind. I'm happy. I want to buy this. I'm still going to buy. I don't want my money back or anything. But this isn't what you have a picture of on your website. The picture's wrong. And he said, "Oh, we can't keep up with Bruichladdich." He's like, he said, they do so many things all the time that he said lots of times we'll slip one by, and everything's changing all the time.
Yeah, it's amazing. We just did a tasting this morning. Well, this morning my time, but Australia evening. And we were just chatting about the sheer amount of products that have come out. Even since 2001. I think in those first 11 years of reopening, there was over 430 different styles or different varieties of bottles, and between like Valencias, Bruichladdich, Port Charlottes, and Octomores, there was just no stopping us, and obviously now the range is what we would say a little bit more refined, but we've still got so many different varieties of whiskey coming out.
It's fun. I mean, it really kind of, it's almost like I'm stealing a line from Rachel McNeil in the film, but it's like following a football team. You sort of like, oh, what's up now? What are the stats and
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the idea, like trying to look at like the ranges. We're looking at like cask type 1 minute, but then we look at barley variety, then we look at age. It's just trying to challenge all of these ideas within the whiskey industry about how different whiskey can be time on time again when you play about with the ingredients that you use. And I think Islay barley's an amazing one to have, very close to home as well. So thank you for choosing that one.
Well, it's. I mean, you're from Islay originally, yes, right? Native, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been there five times now, and it's amazing to me when I know a lot of Islay whiskeys on it, to be honest, but nothing more than the Islay barley. It takes me right to Islay, even more than the Port Charlotte does. The Bruichladdich Islay barley takes me right to, like, I feel like I'm standing on the shores of Loch-and-Dal.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's that sense of place, isn't it? Especially with the Islay barley. I think keeping it a little bit younger. It's all about showcasing the barley and the distillate influence for sure. And yeah, on the nose and the palate, it's incredible. And every time we release a new vintage, you're like, oh no, but I really like the 2011. I like the 2007. But actually, it's just so different every time we release a new vintage that it's just an expression of that vintage year, really. Because you've got the 2011, I've got the 2012 in this glass, don't you? So we're comparing as we go.
Yeah, we'll have to. It's too bad we can't try them both. I haven't had the 2012 yet, so
I can assure you it's very, very good, very tasty.
How does it compare to the 11? Because this is my third bottle of this.
Oh, well, to be honest, the 11 is an absolute cracker. But I have to say the 2012 has been, or is, my favourite Islay barley that we've released to date. And it actually passes by that 2007 Rockside Farm as well that you mentioned at the start. And that was one of the kind of top Islay barleys for myself. But the Islay barley for the 2012 is 8 years old. So it's actually a little bit older than your 2011. So the 2011 is 6 years. But with that, we're using a combination of the first fill American oak for 75%, and then you've got 25% second fill French wine casks in there as well. So, like, on the nose, it's all about that green apple, kind of kiwi, pear, and barley sugar, and then on the palate, it's just like super creamy, loads of oiliness to it, but very, very full bodied as well. It's a real delicate whiskey, but so many different flavor notes coming through on it. It's beautiful.
Now I'm jealous.
I know. But hey, you've got 2011, which is very different as well. But obviously between the two, you're taking different farms, you're taking different barley varieties on top of that as well. So, it's very difficult to say why things are different, because every element has a different, where it's been grown, how it's been grown, who grew it, just to start off.
Well, there's like a peppery note on the 2011 that I really love, and it's like I said, I bought 3 bottles of it in the last year, so it's which is a lot for me.
And it's really interesting with the Islay barleys, because you get a really fine balance between the distillate influence and the barley, but then that cask influence just coming over the top as well. And people ask, why do you bottle it like 6 years for that 2011 or 8? And it's because we don't want to mask those flavors. The longer obviously it's aged, you're going to get much more of that oak influence, but really it's about barley here. And like you say, that peppery note, sometimes that can come off the distillate, sometimes it can come from the wine casks that they're matured in as well. So yeah, really exciting.
It seems to me, I might be wrong on this, but it seems to me that it's with wine casks, especially, not even sherry casks, but specifically wine casks, that there's some of them can have a big influence real quick, and you don't want it to be too long, or it'll start to run the show.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm probably almost certain that Adam and Fraser kind of touched on the influence of casks in their chat two weeks ago. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's something like we've got such a variety of casks at the warehouse. So if anyone isn't aware of the distillery, but we do store 100% of the casks on Islay, and right now we're hitting close to about 80,000 casks of whiskey in storage, which is incredible in itself. But within that, you've got over 200 varieties of oak rolling about the warehouse. But, there is this kind of idea that we play around and, we just put things, or Adam kind of plays around with different wine casks, sherry casks. But in the back of his head, he's also got to be very careful, because everything that we produce at the distillery through the stills is very light. It's very delicate and quite floral, especially when we look at the Bruichladdich and the unpeateds. So, sometimes 6 months, sometimes 3 months in these kind of big, robust kind of red wine casks can be enough. But sometimes, depending on the cask, it could be finished off there for 2-3 years and longer as well. So it really just depends on the spirit and kind of what I suppose what Adam really wants to showcase.
I've talked about this on social media a lot. There's a specific Port Charlotte. There was a Valencia when we went there when we were shooting. It was just the distillery Valencia, and I bought a bottle. And every time I ever have a dram of it, I dream about it the same night.
Oh.
And so I completely fell in love with it. And I told one of our producers who's in Glasgow she's in Renfrew.
Yep.
And she got in touch with the distillery and got me a second bottle before so then I had 2 bottles. And then I was just down to the end of it. And then my birthday last month, a good friend of the film, our friend Udo Sontag, found me a bottle and sent it to me for my birthday. So I'm still, 3 years on, I still have bottles of my dream dram.
Oh, that is a fantastic story, and shout out to Udo. He is the man in the know when it comes to Valencia.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like with the Valencias, with their single casks. So obviously, like when you find one like you have there, it's so amazing when you can continue drinking it after that bottle, because you probably were like, oh my god, that's it, finished. But yeah, to get onto your third, that's very, very impressive. Which one out of curiosity, can you remember which?
Yeah. Yeah. It's 2005 Port Charlotte MNC.
Oh, okay.
And I've actually asked Adam, you should make more MNC finished Port Charlotte.
You'll be like the sole purchaser for that. Just think, I'll buy it, right?
I would buy a cask. If I could buy a cask of that, I would buy a cask of that. There's just something about that whiskey that just speaks to some part of my lizard brain that which is cool.
Yeah.
And when we did the Burns Night launch a few months ago, we had Dr. Rachel Barry on one night, and she and I were talking before we went live, and I was telling her about the dreaming of this whiskey, and she gave me a piece of advice. And I've said this on here to other guests before, but I just love it so much, which is, if you really give yourself over to the journey, not the destination, drink that final dram of it, say goodbye, and know that another one will come. Just a different one, but another one will come. Just trust the process and just let it go. Because otherwise, it's going to fit,
Yeah, because otherwise you just stick with that one. Yeah, I agree. That's really good advice.
We have a couple of comments I want to bring up on the screen. Graham Fraser says, I started buying all the Bruichladdich in 2001 and gave up trying after a couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, there has certainly been quite a few over the years. Anyone that's managed to collect all of them, thank you for your continued support. And I hope you have, your own Bruichladdich cellar underneath the house. There's been a few. Hopefully now you'll find that the range has kind of been honed in a little bit.
Jason Cousins told us on an event we did a few weeks ago that in 1 week in 2009, Bruichladdich released 19 expressions. That was the pinnacle of.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we shouldn't set out to break that record either. To be honest with you, there was. I think when we reopened Bruichladdich back in 2001, and Simon might have mentioned that later this week, but there was so many casks there that some were ready to be sold, some were needing to be recast, but there were so many in good casks that were ready to go. And I think that idea of just showing that we were going to set out to be a bit different and do things a bit differently. We weren't going to just have these 3 expressions that defined the distillery. And I think just having the wonderful Jim McEwen as a mindset behind Bruichladdich, and having Duncan McGilver there on site in production and the rest of the original team, it just shows the creativity of these guys back in 2001 to start things off like that.
And it almost felt, I mean, I wasn't there, but in my extensive research, it almost felt like a dam broke Like it was just this explosion of creativity. And the cool thing to me, when we started making the film, Bruichladdich was always part of it, but it wasn't. It was an outsized role it took on after we started talking to everyone and doing more and more. It kind of, as we made the film changed a bit.
Sure.
And the thing that really excited me was it was creativity born of necessity. It wasn't just the sort of it was like the distillery had no money. The distillery had no, like long-term backing. It needed to be creative, and all these people rose to that challenge.
Yeah.
And I just love that, it was everybody, they needed to do it. So they did it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was, how do we change up Bruichladdich, but keep Bruichladdich as Bruichladdich moving forward, and I think you've got just even that chat about all these different expressions that we released or the team did back then. But, even to look at your 3 brands that we still produce now, to go ahead and be like, no, we're going to continue making unpeated as our house style in an island that's known for heavily peated whiskey, and then bring in Port Charlotte and distill that for the first time, and then look at Octomore in 2002. Who would have thought we could come up and run that and make it part of the distillery still almost 20 years later. It's really creative mindsets that really have shaped the way that we do things still to this day.
Yeah. And it's funny. I think the way we've been dealing with a lot more people lately who haven't tried Octomore, because we've kind of branched out from our original screenings we were doing was with hardcore Bruichladdich fans. But now we've been, doing some stuff with a lot of bourbon groups and things like that in there. And the way they talk about Octomore is the way like teenagers talk about the biggest roller coaster at the amusement park. Like, I'm not ready for that one yet. And I always tell people that's not what it is. It's not a gimmick whiskey where like you should get a free t-shirt if you manage to drink one. It's a beautiful, elegant, yes, it's huge. It's a big whiskey, but it's so balanced and I love it. I mean, I absolutely love this stuff.
Yeah. Do you know, there's a story about Octomore as well. Like, I started with the distillery about 7.5 years ago now, which is crazy to think that. But when I started, I'm going to put this like this. I didn't like whiskey as such, but I was more interested in the production side. Now, that statement of I didn't like whiskey as such lasted about a week under the watchful eye of Jim McEwen. It didn't last long at all. But I remember on like our second day, he's like, come up to the warehouses with me, and you're sitting there with this guy that's so like full of knowledge, but just making it so easy to understand and learn. And he's like, right, do you like whiskey? And I was like, I can't say no, right now, can I? But I said, no, I'm willing to learn. And he took me up to the warehouses, up to warehouse 12, where they do the vatting. And he actually opened an Octomore. At that point, I think it was a 10-year-old, but it was fully matured in Sauterne casks. And he put it in the glass, and classic, this size, gave it to me, little taste. And I thought, God, I've just tasted what is classed as, at that point, the world's heaviest peated single malt, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And that's somebody that came from not, drinking whiskey day to day, really enjoying Octomore. So yeah, I completely hear you. People are often a bit kind of hesitant to get on board with Octomore, but it's so much more than what's on the bottle in the number format. I think for years we chatted about ppm and ABV and age, and we still do to a certain extent, but it's trying to get people away from just looking at numbers and talk about taste, because it's totally different to what you might assume.
Yeah. I have some more comments that are coming up here. So, Mark Pruitt had his first Islay barley the other day. I'm glad Mark, that you recall the pepper, because that's the thing that really defines the 2011 to me compared to the earlier vintages that I've had.
Yeah. A lot of them are quite malt driven usually, but I agree, pepperiness on that 2011.
Now, I think you're probably much better qualified to answer this question than I am. I will read, though. Good evening, Chloe and Greg. I'm loving the midweek chat. Something I've been wondering for a while is what the letters such as MNC, PAC, OLC stand for.
Sure. So yeah, this is all about the cask type that the whiskies are matured in. So it's just our way of coding them, because obviously sometimes with additions like the MRC, we're not actually allowed to say specific wine casks that they might be matured in. So for example, the OLC is Oloroso sherry cask. So OL Oloroso and then sherry casks. So it's just our way of being able to give a bit more insight, but not go too much into the detail because, of course, just because of the industries and the regulations, we can't share all the details from some of the wineries that we do pick the cask from. But yes, talking of PAC, it's an absolute cracker of a dram. So that'll be coming to you guys soon. Have you tasted that one?
No.
It'll be worth it. It'll be worth it. It's fantastic.
I haven't. I was lucky enough. I was drawn in the online tasting set thing. I haven't gotten it yet though. My wife and I were both drawn,
Fantastic.
But they haven't arrived yet.
Yeah, so. It'll be worth it. It'll be worth it. Is that the masterclass ballot?
Yeah, the master. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I haven't. The reason I bring that up is I haven't tried any new. Different Bruichladdich in quite a while, just because. Well, that's not true. I've tried all of the Octomore 11s. So
that's good. A solid set of Octomores, the 11s. Yeah, I've got a few samples in the cupboard there, ready to go. But yeah, there's some really beautiful things coming out of the distillery at the moment. Like we said, we've just released that Bruichladdich Islay barley. We've got some beautiful beer and organic still going. Then the Port Charlotte, the new Islay barley, and the PAC for the cask exploration, and then the Octomore 11s as well. So So again, we've refined the range, but we're still going for it with these releases throughout the year.
Yeah, I think if you started releasing 19 a week again, Derek Mather might even not be able to catch up or keep up.
There's a challenge, Derek. There's a challenge for sure.
Yeah, actually, I wouldn't doubt him.
No, me neither. Me neither. He'd make some more barbecue sauce, and with something.
It's funny. I bought what I thought I was buying 2 bottles from him, and it was my fault. I filled out the form wrong when he was selling the barbecue sauce online. I bought 2 cases. So I still have a lot. I gave out bottles to our whole team, and then I still have a lot more. But
it's just become your cupboard staple for the moment.
Yes, and it's funny because my son is 10 and constantly asks for more Octomore, but he never says Octomore barbecue sauce. I think he knows now. I think he's just being funny, but he's always.
I like it.
Wanting more Octomore.
Starting them young, Greg. Starting them young.
So we have some other comments coming from the YouTube feed too. It's great having so many varieties of bottlings. My concern is the cost of malt whiskey in general. Some are way out of reach for so many people. That's certainly true. It's it's an expensive process, and it's gotten. It's funny though. Malt whiskeys are expensive. They just are. But the overwhelming majority of the Bruichladdich range is I think quite affordable. It's easy to lose track of that because Octomores tend to be fairly expensive even from the start. But Classic Laddie is probably the most inexpensive single malt I drink on a regular basis, and I can get it for probably £30 around here.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually a conversation that we had today in the tasting with the Australian team. I think when we could use Classic as an example. When you look at the skill and the complexity that goes into creating just one batch of Classic Laddie, and this type of barley that we're buying in, the fact that we're doing such a slow distillation on site, and the sheer kind of vastness of the casks that we're using as well. Sometimes in a Classic Laddie vatting, you're starting off with beautiful first fill American oak, but then you've got some French wine casks. You might have some beautiful sherry casks in there. So it really, like you say, as an entry whiskey to the range, it's actually the hardest whiskey for Adam to recreate every single time. But the quality from start to finish is absolutely there. And I'm not just saying that from a Bruichladdich perspective, but it's not just like something that we put together because it's the core. It's something that takes up so much time and effort to create. And price wise, I think it's bang on at the moment.
I really wished we could have used this in the film because I found it so funny, but it just didn't fit for what we were doing. It's going to be in a little extra thing we're working on, but it's some distilleries. Yes, people are saying things in the comments here that there's designer bottles and things like that drive prices up, and some distilleries really get into that stuff. But Blair Bowman, the whiskey writer, a good friend of the film and become a good friend of mine, he said something that was very funny. He was talking about Glenfarclas, And he said some distilleries just focus on the whiskey. And he said when Glenfarclas releases a very special whiskey, most of the time all they do is change the color of paper on the label. Like they just reload the printer with purple paper instead of white.
Yeah, I think that's it. Like at Bruichladdich, we're certainly about the liquid. It's all about the liquid. So you take anything that we do, but for example, Islay barley. The fact that we're growing barley on Islay is difficult. Starting off growing it on the island, it's hard. You've got the weather, the geese, the deer. You're paying these farmers a premium from the get-go, but still we're trying to make that affordable down the line, so that people can experience what we're trying to achieve at the distillery. But yeah, I think we've got some good designs, but definitely if we were just to switch up the design, I don't think anybody that supports Bruichladdich would be so happy if the liquid wasn't just as complex as it is.
Yeah. I mean, and it's, to me, I love things like I love the labels on Glenfarclas, and I love the labels on Bruichladdich, and I realize they're very different. And I know that the Springbank, their labels, I think, are still designed by hand. The guy who is their designer, he does them by hand and delivers them by bicycle messenger in a tube.
Oh, there you go.
Which feels very Springbank.
Very, very much so.
We have a question from Pete Head, specifically for you.
Hey.
Is the core range from Bruichladdich in the UK the same as in Asia Pacific? If not, what is and what are the differences?
Yes, they are exactly the same. So what we release in the UK is what we release globally. The only time that we might do something different is if we do some single casts for some markets. But no, everything that you can find in the UK, you can find in Asia Pacific as well.
I have a follow-up question to that. What have you guys done over this past year now that with what would have normally been global travel retail expressions? Are they just on hold, or are they being released elsewhere?
So at the moment, well, the only release that we have done that would have gone into duty free would have been the 11.2. So the 11.2, we decided obviously we couldn't put it into duty free, so that became a Laddie shop exclusive. So anything that we would have done would have gone into the Laddie website itself and sold online that way. Because of course we would have loved to have been able to continue with GTR, but the market is just not there. No one was traveling. No one is really traveling still, and for the foreseeable. So we pulled that out and we put it into domestic. What we'd say just in market. So I believe still on the website you can still get a hold of 11.2, which is great to see.
What about the Laddie 8?
Yeah, so that again it's still technically available in travel retail, and you can still order it from a lot of the airports. We've not pulled it either from travel retail because it was a continued product year on year. But of course you can also buy that from the Laddie shop as well. So we try to not just put that direct into the country, because we still, moving forward, we have to look at GTR, in the years to come. But there potentially will be a few changes to the range moving forward, and kind of how we divvy up between what we class as domestic markets and the duty-free industry as well.
I'm a big fan of the Laddie 8. Every time I travel internationally, I would buy a bottle of it. And now I'm out of it.
Yeah. It's so good. Like the amount of citrus fruit notes on the Laddie 8 is incredible. Like pineapple just comes to mind when you think of Laddie 8. It's so good. Yeah. Actually, I'm going home to Islay, I think a week on Friday actually, so I might need to pick myself up one while I'm back.
My grandmother, when I was little, used to make fruit salad. It was very sort of pineapple driven. And whenever I drink the Laddie 8, I always think of that. I always get that sort of big fruit, the sort of pineapple that's been chopped up a lot. So a lot of the odors get released from it, It always takes me to her fruit salad.
Oh, it's really cool. Yeah, I do. I'm a fan, between the classic Laddie and the Laddie 8, they're very different, but they both bring out that kind of real Bruichladdich house style. And anyone that's listening that does have a classic Laddie or a Laddie 8 at home, just if you don't know, you can always check out the batch code on the back of the bottle. So that 5-digit code, well, if you type it in online, it'll take you to a webpage that'll give you a breakdown of the casks, the vintages, barley varieties. So going full transparency on that stuff, and it's really exciting to see them side by side. Like if you get two classic Laddies that have different batch codes, just to see different work that goes into them, because subtle differences may appear, but Adam doing his job very, very well. It should be very similar.
Did you see? I did a thing about that on social media the other day.
Oh,
I was finishing a classic laddie. I had 2 drams
oh
left, and
yes,
I
I
had a
heard
new
it. Yeah,
bottle. And I posted a photo of the two, but I didn't post them because my one photo didn't turn out that well. I was going to post the batch codes on the back
yeah,
because I took it, and it's amazing that they're. Well, what I wrote in the post was they're clearly siblings, but they're not twins.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah,
and it's incredible how much it used to be a big deal. 2004, 5, 6. It was a big deal that Bruichladdich was doing a wine finish. That alone was a big deal. Now, I mean, you look at like the Ternery project, that whole sort of the map of that, or
yeah,
the codes off of the back of the classic Laddie. It's insane. It's amazing.
yeah. Yeah, and I think like when you did that post, it was exactly right. That, and when it comes back to the distillery, the fact that we're making natural whiskey, non-caramel colored, non-chill filtered, we've got natural ingredients, natural casks. In theory, they shouldn't ever be the same. Not one cask should give us that same flavor profile. And when we're making a whiskey, yes, we'll maybe have an idea, or Adam will have an idea in his head about we want to have like light, fruity, kind of that citrus note. We want to get that malt through. But how he does it, he can't do it the same as the last one. So he's got to bring in, some more casks. It's obviously always built around American oak, but how he then kind of really lifts that with wine and sherry or cognac, it's completely down to his palate on the day. And a lot of sampling takes place to get the classic laddie right, So yeah, it's incredible.
That reminds me. 2 weeks ago, Erica Beindorf was on here with me, and
Yeah.
she talked about doing having to try to recreate the laddie as part of a
Yes.
training.
Yeah.
Have you had to do that?
Yeah, well, I actually created the toolkits for like everybody to
Oh,
lead these tastings. Yeah, along with Joanne, who you obviously met. So we worked
yep.
together on this. So the idea behind it was that classic laddie can kind of often be overlooked because it's the core. There's seemed to be like a lot more different releases in the range, but actually we wanted to really showcase the work and the time and the effort that went into them. So basically, what we did was we got 8 components. So it was called the Classic Laddie Cask Components Kit. And it was 8 components at cask strength from one batch of Classic Laddie. Then we'd do a tasting of 8 of the components, and then we'd task the guys that were attending the tasting to recreate the Classic Laddie. So, they'd have their dram of Classic, then they'd have like their pipettes, their funnels, and we basically get them to make a 100 ml sample of their version of Classic Laddie. And then anything or anyone that kind of really resonated well, we could send it into Adam, and he would score mark it, and give it a out of 100. How close are you? Which was really cool because sometimes in 100 mils it's not a lot of room to play with, but sometimes people would be adding bourbon in or American oak style casks. Then they think, I'm going to go heavy on sherry, but actually too much sherry wasn't what the classic was about. So it really taught people like that art of blending and balance as well. It's difficult.
Yeah, I can. I mean, I've played around with it, but not with that amount of pressure on me.
Yeah. No, we should.
When we interviewed Alan, I asked a question we were talking about black art, and I referred to it. I'm paraphrasing here, but I referred to it as sort of emblematic of Jim and rampant experimentation. And Alan actually had a really thoughtful, interesting take on it, which was, he said, I actually think the Classic Laddie is a better example of Jim. He said, because the Classic Laddie is, and the goal of it has always been to balance the wood and the barley and the distillate. All of these things are sort of working together, and therefore they're all showcased. And it's not so old that it's all about the wood, and it's not so young that it's all about the spirit. It's this kind of dance of the three.
Yeah,
And
I like that.
I think that every time I drink it ever since then.
Yeah, no, I completely see where he's coming from on that one, and I think with black art, it's always going to be special because it's rare. We don't have that old stock dating back from 1994 and before. I think there's a handful of casks there, and it was almost like a special thing to release the black art, because it is rare, and it's kind of showcasing some of these more sought after casks in the industry. Whereas, like you say, classic is showcasing the art of blending and that skill behind the head distiller or the master distiller at that point. And it was a big move to go with non-age statement when Jim put that out there in 2013, and to continue that right through to now is amazing. Yeah, classic, and it's so versatile as a whiskey. You know, like however you want to drink it, and you know, there's no right way to drink whiskey, but you know, you can have classic as a dram if you want it, like as a highball. Like, you know, we were just chatting about Japan before we went live, and obviously it's the home of highballs, but classic as a highball is beautiful. But it also goes well with cocktails as well, you know. So it holds its flavor really well, and I think that comes down to the cask, the barley, but also the fact that we released that at 50% ABV. And yeah, it's a cracker of a whiskey.
Yeah, yeah. Well, speaking of Japan, you know, so I want to talk a little bit about that because, you know, we, as I said to you, we're getting ready to do some more events in various Asian countries, and when I say in them, I mean right now, for the time being, I'm still in Los Angeles, but you know, with groups there and targeted there, and hopefully we're going to be doing a bunch of events in Japan coming up. That we're just trying to work out some of the very complicated logistics that the world has right now, but we're very eager to do it and ready to do it. And, you know, I wanted to, this is one of the things I definitely want to talk to you about on Saturday, but I'll tease it now if I can. You know, about, you know, what it's like repping Bruichladdich in the Asian markets and how it's been obviously embraced, but.
Yeah, you know, and I think to sum up, like, so I've been looking after like the Asia Pacific region for about 3 years, and you can only describe that as an incredible opportunity on my behalf, but an experience as well. Like, even though, so I originally was brought up on Islay, and then I'm the only other place that I've lived other than Glasgow now is Singapore. So I've lived on 2 islands, but in very different different respects as well. So, you know, when you move out to Singapore, I almost didn't know what to expect, you know, because you don't have the distillery, you don't have the island behind you to talk about the brand that you're working with. But every country that I've been to in Asia Pacific could not be more hospitable, and the people that I've met have been fantastic from the get-go. And for me, it was such a humbling experience that people knew Islay. You know, they knew the people at Bruichladdich, they knew the people in the shop in Port Charlotte. They knew they knew the tour guides at Bamor, like Lafroig, Lagavulin, and it almost felt as if like you weren't that far away from home wherever you were in the world. And you know, I remember Jim saying to me ages and ages ago, but he said, you know, you're not just like, at that point I was just a tour guide at the distillery, you know, doing shop tours and tastings, but he said when you're representing the brand, you're also representing Islay, and that couldn't have been more true. You know, it was just all about people being so excited to understand Islay and understand Bruichladdich more. And yeah, it's gone down really well. Obviously, there was a lot of work before I even was on the scene within Asia Pacific. So I was carrying on the work of the other brand ambassadors and the teams out there. But yeah, every market was different and still is, you know, and even in each market, every city is also different. So people drink differently, people talk about whiskey differently, knowledge levels vary. But that's the exciting thing, you know, there's never this, what do we talk about? Well, there's always something to talk about and always something to get stuck into. And yeah, it's been an absolute experience for sure.
You know, it's funny. I've spent 3 years basically stalking Jim McEwen around the world, and this is just last week. He said something to me for the first time that I hadn't thought of before, and you probably have firsthand experience with this. He said, "You never know how effective your visit." He was talking about South Korea, but it's true of anywhere. He said, "You never know how effective your first visit is until your second visit." Because your first visit, you have 5 people, and then the second visit, you have 40 people, and then the third visit, there's 80 people. That, you know, and then you realize that those people didn't come by accident; they were sort of, you know, the math worked.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And you know, I think like any new brand ambassador that jumps into the role can feel that as well. You know, like the first time you're the new person. You know, what he or she is going to say about the brand, but then all of a sudden, you know, you start talking about Islay and you start making some friends there. They tell their friends, and it just becomes, again, not to use the word lightly, but this like the Bruichladdich family becomes larger and larger and larger, you know, and then all of a sudden someone's had drinks with Adam when he visited, and then they've had drinks with Jim when they visited. And I think, like, of course every distillery is different, but at the distillery it's such a tight-knit community that, you know, the fact that somebody might have met Mary in the shop, you know, or just something like that, but you're in the middle of Taipei, you know, it's just, you don't expect these conversations to happen, but when they do, it again, it's a very humbling experience. And the fact, I always think that the fact that, you know, you've traveled out there to potentially South Korea, it could be to China, to talk about Bruichladdich, but they've also traveled to Islay to visit Bruichladdich, and that says a lot about how much they respect the distillery as well.
It's funny. I think it was the third time. Doesn't matter. One of the times I went to Islay, we flew, and I was with my wife, and we were at the Glasgow airport. No, we were in London.
Yeah.
And then there was a group of tourists from Japan, and they were on our flight to Glasgow, and then they were at the gate at the Logan Air, and then they were on our flight to Islay, and then we saw them there, and then we went to after we checked into our hotel. Then the first place we went was Bruichladdich because I had work to do. I forget what I was doing, and then they were there, and it was like we were all together in sync from London through to Bruichladdich.
Oh, agreed. And you know, I bet you if you went on a tour at any of the distilleries, you would have bumped into them as well. It's such a small island.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I'm like I said to you beforehand, I've not been to Japan yet, and I really hope that later this year I can go with the film instead of. I mean, look, this is great. Zoom's great. Zoom tastings are great. They really are, and I think sometimes I've been on plenty of Zoom tastings with, like, I belong to a whiskey club here in LA called the Southern California Whiskey Club, and I've been on plenty of Zooms with them, and I know most of them. Mm-hmm. If the whiskey's good and the talk is good and everything, you absolutely forget that the technology disappears, but it still isn't the same. And I still want to go, and I still don't. I don't want my first tour of Japan to be a Zoom based tour. I want to go.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. We as I was saying to you before we went live there, like I just did a tasting with the team in Australia today, and it was fantastic. We had 50 people on screen. We had a fantastic time. But I said to them at the end, you know, next time I am in Melbourne, you know, you'll need to come along to the physical tasting, and we can have these conversations in person. And I think there'll always be a place moving forward with digital tastings or trainings. You know, I think it's shown what we can do from behind the screen, but it will never replace that feeling of being in the room, you know, getting everyone to stand up and cheers, or, like, you know, shout out tasting notes, things like that. And as a brand ambassador, you know, you feed off of that energy in the room, which is exciting. But at the same time, we're very lucky that we have this technology to be able to do stuff like this. Otherwise, the last year would have been very different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have you know who's made out really, really well this last year, other than Zoom? The people that make miniature bottles.
Correct.
Whoever's making these is.
Oh, absolutely. We've definitely distributed a few of them over the last year, and also juice bags, like little like juice packets. They've become ever more popular in the Pacific region too.
I have. I can't reach them to show you. You know what they look like. I have a couple of empty Bruichladdich tins over here, but what they're all full of now is empty miniatures. I'm just saving.
Yeah, I like it. It's a good way to do it, and you know, we've been able to the last year launch so many different products and do these product launches and do the big events from behind the screen, and it's incredible what technology can allow you to do. But yeah, as much as you'd like to go to Japan, I'm the same. I'd like to get back out on the road as soon as
I've not been to Singapore yet either, and you know, so we've got a good relationship with the guys at the Single Cask, so I'm going to go there.
Yeah, shout out to Brendan, Nishian, and Chiwidi.
You know, they're moving.
Mm-hmm. They are indeed.
Yeah,
that's great. Like, I love talking about, like, so Singapore was my base for 3 years, and wow, what an amazing country. I mean, even just if we talk about the whiskey scene or the bar scene out there, it's incredible. You know, I think, you know, Asia's top 50 bars was just announced, and the amount of Singapore representation in that list just shows the quality of drinks coming out of the country. But yeah, the whiskey collections, and then if you even look at your independents as well in Singapore, phenomenal. It's amazing.
You know how I became friends with Brendan is we were at the Village in Nuremberg, and we were both supposed to do an event that Brendan thought was like walking distance to the hotel, and it was actually like 45-minute drive from the hotel. And I had a rental car, and I was supposed to be at the same event, and so I gave him a ride, and so that's how we became friends.
Friendship to stumble upon. He's a great guy, and like you say, you released that obviously the bottling with single cask, and incredible.
Well, they had at the Village, they did an event called Jim McEwen and Friends. This was literally the last thing I ever did recreationally traveling. This was last February, March. I think I flew back on like March 3rd. And the single cask guys released a bottle of Bruichladdich. It was a single cask. There was a sherry cask, and it was like the talk of the festival. Everybody was
they were liking it.
Excellent whiskey.
Oh, love to hear that. Yeah, the single cask of them, they've released some crackers in the past. I've got a sample bottle of it might actually be that sherry cask as well that you might have been chatting about, but that's in the back of the cupboard for the moment. In my little sample cupboard. But yeah, they're doing some amazing things, and I think it's like, again, it shows the versatility of spirit when you start bottling as single casks or independents as well. You can start to really pull in from different regions of Scotland and showcase the flexibility of the spirit as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do this every week. I always go way over time because I really enjoy talking with all of you whiskey folks. This is what I would do recreationally. This isn't work for me.
Yeah. No, it's I don't even know what day it is today. Tuesday evening in Scotland. So better to share a dram and chat Bruichladdich.
I saw on I don't know if you personally know Gemma Patterson at Balvenie.
I've never met Gemma, but I do know of her.
I know her a little bit, and I was watching. She did an Instagram video today, and at the end of it, she said, "Have a great weekend, everybody." I thought
that maybe either shows how good or bad her week is going. I'm not quite. I know days they just blend into one. I think in lockdown, don't they?
Crafty Field says, "Hi, hey Chloe."
Oh, hello. God, I've not spoken to you in a long time. I think the last time was maybe a couple of years ago in Sydney, actually. That's
I've been getting lots of little comments here, not so much questions, but
MCO1, beautiful. Marsala wine cask, that was.
Yeah. So, the Gladiator is fabulous. I agree. But before I let you go, I know it's late there. I wanted to bring up, this is the link to the event that will be, this is our final one of the series of three, the People of Bruichladdich that we're doing, where, the film focuses a lot on the people that resurrected the distillery, and we really, and the people who are there now, but we really wanted to do a couple events where we got to meet the people who are running and making the great whiskey today. And so we started with Lynn McEwen and Joanne Boyd, and then we did Adam and Fraser. And then this weekend, it's going to be you and Mr. Simon Coughlin, who I believe I've done a few events with him now, and he makes fun of me because he's not really in the movie very much. But in my defense, he was not in Scotland when we shot the movie.
What can you do? You can't Photoshop a man all the time.
There were three things on my list that I didn't get to do when we made the film. I wanted to interview Dr. Bill Lumsden. Yep. He was in India. I don't remember where Simon was, but he was not in Scotland. And I wanted to visit Ardnamurchan distillery, and it was just too far away. And so those are the three, but there was nothing I could do. But I'm really excited to I've had some chats with Simon, but not like I think we're going to do on Saturday. Although these events are really driven by the people that come and join us. They get to ask the questions. I'm just a vestigial tail.
Yeah, we're both excited. I think we'll both be sharing a dram and reminiscing. It's when people ask us to chat, especially about like the startup, the resurrection of the distillery, we can chat all day. But I think when you've got somebody like Simon, if anyone wants to know the ins and outs of like how Bruichladdich restarted, this Saturday will be the ideal opportunity to do so, because he is one of the guys that was there from the start, from 2001, buying Bruichladdich and really shaping the business and how it's kind of grown over the last, since he obviously passed on to Douglas as CEO of Bruichladdich. But yeah, I think he'll tell some stories. There'll be some, of course, it'll be very raw and very true as well, and showing how difficult it was at some points. But there's a lot of fun things that come with it, and once you have a little dram, it's just nice to kind of hear that straight from the mouth of somebody that's been there from the start.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah. To be honest, I've not seen Simon since lockdown kicked off. So this will be the first time on screen that I've actually seen him. So it'll be lovely to catch up.
Well, hopefully anyone who sees this will be able to join us on Saturday. There's the link below there. It will sort you all out, and you can watch the movie. Any of the tickets to this come with a ticket to the movie, and you can watch the movie whenever you want. It's not timed to the event. The only thing that's timed to the event is the live presence of Chloe and Simon, because they actually, are real people who don't want to necessarily do an event with us at 4:00 in the morning. So that is time specific.
If you give Simon and me enough single malt, we might still be on like 4:00 in the morning.
Well, I might take you up on that, but no. So it's 9 p.m. your time, Saturday, 1 p.m. my time. We'll all be there, and hopefully you all will too. So.
Really excited.
Well, thank you so much, Chloe. It's really fun talking to you.
No worries. Thank you very much for having me on. And yeah, it's a real pleasure. And as I say, I've watched the film, an absolute cracker. It brought tears to my eyes as well. So yeah, it's anyone that's listening just now and hasn't watched it, cannot recommend it enough. Get a dram poured. Laddie 8, Islay Barley, one of the two. And yeah, just sit back and enjoy it. I do think, sitting with a dram of whiskey and watching the film, you can't beat it, to be honest.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
There you go.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you, guys. Take care.
Bye.